What's good, everyone? Welcome to Reddit Story Dose. I read the craziest stories from Reddit so you don't have to. Today we've got 5 stories that will blow your mind. Let's get started. From AITA. AITA for refusing to move my wedding date so it wouldn't overshadow my sister's engagement? My fiancé and I have been engaged for 15 months. We picked our wedding date almost a full year ago, sitting at our kitchen table with a calendar spread out between us and 2 cups of coffee going cold. We sent save the dates last fall, the kind with our photo on the front and a little magnet on the back so people could stick them on their fridges. We mailed the actual invitations in February, hand-addressed, with calligraphy I paid extra for because I'm the kind of person who notices things like that. The wedding is in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. I keep saying that out loud to myself like a countdown. Last month, my younger sister got engaged. We were thrilled for her, genuinely thrilled. Her boyfriend, who is honestly one of the sweetest guys I've ever met, had been planning the proposal for months. He'd actually pulled me aside back in the summer and asked if I'd come to the jewelry store with him. We spent a whole Saturday afternoon looking at rings, and I watched him agonize over carat sizes and band metals like he was choosing a kidney donor. My sister had been talking about getting engaged for years, dropping hints at family dinners, sending me screenshots of rings she liked, and finally it was happening for her. When she called to tell me, she was breathless and laughing and crying all at once, and I cried too, right there in my car in the grocery store parking lot. She and her fiancé wanted to have an engagement party. She decided on a date that was 2 weeks after my wedding. That was fine. I figured the family would already be in celebration mode, everyone still glowing, and it would be a beautiful continuation. We told her congratulations and offered to help plan. I sent her a link to a venue I thought she might like. I offered to make the playlist. Then last week, she called me crying. I picked up immediately, thinking something terrible had happened. My stomach actually dropped. What's wrong? Are you okay? Is mom okay? She had been thinking, she said, sniffling, about how my wedding was going to be such a big event for the family, and everyone was going to be focused on me, and then her engagement party was going to feel small in comparison. I just feel like nobody is going to care, she said. Like, everyone will have just done the whole big celebration thing for you, and then I'm asking them to come do another one for me 2 weeks later. It's going to feel like an afterthought. It's not going to feel like an afterthought, I told her. I was pacing my kitchen, phone pressed hard against my ear. These are different things. People are going to be excited for you. You don't get it, she said. Her voice was flat now, not crying anymore. Everyone is going to be talked out. Mom is going to be exhausted. Aunt Linda is going to make some comment about how she just bought a dress for your wedding and now she has to find another outfit. I'm going to be overshadowed. She asked me to move my wedding. I want to be clear, because typing it back now still feels surreal. She wanted me to push it back 6 months so her engagement could have its moment first. She said it would only be fair, since my wedding was going to take all the family's attention and excitement. She said it like she was being reasonable. Like she was the one making a compromise. I thought she was joking. I actually laughed, a short little disbelieving laugh, and waited for her to laugh too. She did not. I sat down at my kitchen table. I could feel my heart in my ears. I told her, gently, that we had a venue, a caterer, a band, and over 150 confirmed guests, many of whom had bought plane tickets. I listed it out, calmly, the way you would explain something to a child. I told her my future in-laws were flying in from out of state. I told her my college roommate was coming from London. I told her that moving the wedding would cost us tens of thousands of dollars in non-refundable deposits and would mean asking everyone we knew to rearrange their lives. I told her this was simply not possible. There was a long silence on the line. I could hear her breathing. You're being selfish, she said. I almost dropped the phone. I'm being selfish? Yes. You always have to make everything about you. You couldn't just give me this one thing. She hung up. The next day, my mother called. I knew before I answered what it was going to be about, and I poured myself a glass of wine before picking up, even though it was 11 in the morning. My mother said she understood my position, she really did, but I should really try to make this work for my sister. Her voice had that careful, measured tone she uses when she's already decided something and is trying to make me agree to it. I have an idea, she said. What if you and James just had a tiny ceremony now? Immediate family only. Just the legal part. And then we do the real celebration, the big one, after your sister's engagement party. That way she gets her moment. I stared at the wall. There is a watercolor print on it that James gave me on our second anniversary, of the little Italian town where we want to honeymoon. I focused on it so I wouldn't say something I couldn't take back. No, Mom. Honey, number. I am not having 2 weddings. I am not telling 150 people the wedding is off. The answer is no. She sighed like I was the one being difficult. My sister stopped speaking to me. She unfollowed me on Instagram. She blocked me on Snapchat, which I only know because my cousin texted me about it. My mother is now telling other relatives that I am being selfish and that I am ruining my sister's joy. 2 of my aunts have called to tell me I should think about what really matters. Aunt Linda actually said the words, "blood is thicker than water," to me, on the phone, in the year of our Lord, like she was reading from a soap opera script. My fiancé thinks his future in-laws have lost their minds. He keeps shaking his head and muttering things like, 15 months, under his breath while he loads the dishwasher. His parents agree. His mother called me yesterday just to tell me she loves me and she cannot wait for the wedding and please do not let anyone, take this from me. My sister, by the way, got engaged 3 weeks ago. My wedding has been planned for 15 months. The math here is not complicated. So am I the idiot for refusing to move my wedding? You're gonna love this one. Neighbor parked in my reserved spot for 3 years. I finally had her car booted on move-out day. My condo came with 1 assigned, numbered parking spot. The number, 23, is painted in bright yellow on the asphalt, big enough that you can see it from the 3rd floor walkway. Right above the number, bolted into the brick wall at eye level, there is a metal sign that says reserved. This spot only in white block letters on a red background. It is not subtle. It is, in fact, the opposite of subtle. I pay WA fees every month, and a portion of those fees, according to the breakdown they mail me each January, goes toward the maintenance of this exact spot. I have lived here for 3.5 years. And from the very first week I moved in, boxes still stacked in my living room, kitchen smelling like packing tape and takeout pad thai. My neighbor in Unit 4B has parked in my spot at least 3 times a week. The first time it happened, I genuinely thought it was a mistake. I came home from work, saw a silver Hyundai sitting in spot 23 like it owned the place, and I figured, okay, new neighbor, easy fix. I walked upstairs, took a breath, and gently knocked on her door. She opened it holding a coffee mug that said "World's Best Aunt." I smiled. I explained, very politely, that the spot was assigned to me, and pointed down at my own car idling in the visitor lane. "Oh my gosh," she said, eyes wide. "I had no idea. I'm so sorry. Let me grab my keys." She apologized 3 more times on the walk down. She moved her car. I thanked her. I went to bed feeling like a reasonable adult who handled a small misunderstanding like a grown-up. The next morning, her car was back in my spot. I want you to understand something. I am not a confrontational person. I am the kind of person who apologizes when other people bump into me at the grocery store. So I went through every official channel a reasonable person can go through. I told the WA. They sent her 3 warning letters on their nice little embossed letterhead. She ignored them. I called the building manager, a tired-looking man named Ron who always smelled faintly of menthol cigarettes. He sighed into the phone and said his hands were tied because she always moved the car eventually, and the bylaws didn't allow him to escalate without sustained occupation, whatever that meant. I left polite notes on her windshield. "Hi neighbor. Just a friendly reminder this is spot 23 smiley face, asterisk I left less polite notes. Please stop parking here. This is my assigned spot." I left notes that were, if I'm being honest, borderline threatening. Final warning. Next time I'm calling a tow truck. I never actually called. She knew I never actually called. Nothing changed. So I started parking in visitor spots, which were almost always full because half the building treated them like personal driveways. When the visitor spots were full, I paid for street parking. The meters in my neighborhood are aggressive, 2-hour limits, app-only payment, and a parking enforcement officer who patrols like he's hunting bounty. One week, I added it up, $48 in a single week, paid in tiny incremental chunks of $2 and $3, just to park my own car at meters because she had decided spot number 23 belonged to her now. I would lie in bed some nights and think about that spot. I would picture the yellow paint of the number, the red and white sign, my empty rectangle of asphalt, and I would feel something dark and patient curl up inside my chest and go to sleep. For 3 years, this was my life. Then in March, things started to shift. I noticed boxes stacked against her living room window when I passed her unit on the way to the mailboxes. A few days later, walking past her open door, she was always leaving it open, like the rules of shared space simply did not apply to her. I saw a moving company estimate sitting on her kitchen counter. The header said Blue Sky Movers in a cheerful font. I memorized the date written at the top before I made myself keep walking. Then, on the morning of April 15th, a U-Haul truck pulled up in front of the building, and I watched from my kitchen window as a man in a yellow vest unfolded the ramp. She was moving out. I had been waiting for this day for a very long time. I went back to my couch. I sipped my coffee. I picked up my phone and called the towing service the WA used. The number had been saved in my contacts for 2 years under the name Justice. I asked the dispatcher, very politely, if I could pre-book a tow. I explained the situation, condensing 3 years of rage into about 90 seconds. The dispatcher actually laughed. Not a mean laugh, a delighted one. The laugh of a woman who had heard 1,000 of these stories and was glad, just this once, to be on the right side of one. "Oh, sweetie," she said. "Yes, of course. You call us the moment that violation occurs, and we will be there within 20 minutes. That afternoon, sometime around 2:30, while her boyfriend was loading her flat-screen TV into the back of the U-Haul, she moved her car into my spot one last time. I watched it happen from my window. She didn't even look up at the sign. She got out, slammed the door, and called over her shoulder to him, just for a few hours, just to clear the front of the building. I called the tow company exactly 2 minutes later. I made myself a piece of toast while I waited. Sourdough. A little butter, a sprinkle of salt. The boot went on first. They're fast with the boot, faster than you'd think, and her car was immobilized before she even came back outside. The tow truck came back 20 minutes later with the full rig, and that's when she heard the diesel engine and came barreling out of her unit in socks and a stained t-shirt, hair flying. She begged. She pleaded. She said she was moving and could not afford this. She said it was just one last time. She said she had been a good neighbor. That last part nearly made me laugh out loud through the window glass. The tow driver, a calm, mustached man with the patience of a saint, looked at his clipboard and said, in a perfectly even voice, "Ma'am, we have your unit on a watch list for repeat parking violations. The towing fee is $250. The release fee is an additional $120. Cash, card, or money order." She paid in cash, peeling 20s out of her purse with shaking hands, swearing the entire time. Words I will not repeat. Words my mother would faint at. I watched the whole thing from my window. I might have made a second small piece of toast and watched while eating it. I might have hummed. She finished her move out 3 hours late, which cost her a partial day's rental on the U-Haul, and almost certainly missed her cleaning deposit deadline downstairs. She never said goodbye. I am okay with that. This next one is wild. New boss said employees pay for coffee, so I started charging him for every pen and sticky note. We had free coffee at our office for over a decade. 2 pots sitting on the counter in the break room. The kind of industrial drip machines that always smelled faintly of yesterday's grounds, refilled hourly by whoever finished the last cup. There was an unwritten rule about it. You took the last pour, you started the next pot. Nobody enforced it. Nobody had to. It was a small thing, but it was a nice thing, and people appreciated it in the quiet way you appreciate things that just work. I used to stop by that break room every morning at 7:52, 8 minutes before my desk shift started. I'd pour into the same chipped mug I kept in the cabinet, nod at whoever was already there, and let the warmth wake my hands up before my brain caught up. It was a ritual. Half the office had a version of it. Then we got a new operations manager. He came in with a binder and a haircut, the kind of guy who says, "Synergy," without irony. Within 3 weeks, he sent out a company-wide email announcing that effective immediately, employees would be responsible for purchasing their own coffee. The break room would still have a coffee maker, he wrote, but employees would need to bring their own beans, filters, creamer, sugar, and any other supplies. The company would no longer subsidize what he called personal beverage consumption. The email used the phrase fiscal discipline 4 times. I counted. I remember reading it at my desk and feeling that specific kind of office annoyance where you can't tell if you're more irritated by the policy or by the language. Probably the language. Personal beverage consumption. Like we were guzzling champagne on the company's dime. The reaction around the office was muted. People grumbled in the hallways and shrugged in meetings. Most started bringing their own instant coffee in little jars, the kind that clatter in your bag. A few people switched to tea, which felt like surrender dressed up as a lifestyle choice. One guy from accounting started walking to the gas station across the street every morning for a styrofoam cup of something brown, and that struck me as a particularly tragic outcome. He'd come back with the cup steaming and his shoes wet, and you could see him trying to convince himself it was fine. I had a different reaction. I read the email 3 times. Once for the content, once for the tone, and once for what I would later think of as the loophole. Then I sat at my desk and made a list. I wrote down every single supply on or around my workstation that the company had provided. Pens, sticky notes, highlighters, paper clips, stapler, tape dispenser, the little staple remover I'd never used but liked having, the hand lotion in the bathroom that the company stocked in those refillable pump bottles, the toilet paper, the hand soap, the paper towels, the tissues at the front desk that everyone used during cold season. If coffee was personal beverage consumption asterisk, then surely pens were personal writing consumption. Sticky notes were personal note consumption. Tissues were personal nose consumption. The whole thing started writing itself in my head, and I had to stop myself from grinning at my monitor. I drafted the email carefully. I did not want to sound smug. Smug closes doors. Polite confusion opens them. I wrote that, per the new policy of fiscal discipline, I would like to clarify the office supply policy going forward. Were employees expected to bring their own pens and sticky notes from home, or were these items still subsidized by the company? I asked because I had noticed a similarity in classification between coffee and other items currently provided at the workplace, and I wanted to make sure I was in compliance. I read it twice, hit send, went and got water from the fountain because, well, he responded within an hour, which told me everything I needed to know about how it landed. His reply was short and visibly annoyed. He said this was a ridiculous comparison. Office supplies were necessary for work. Coffee was a luxury. I felt my pulse pick up the way it does when you know you're right and you also know the other person knows it. I drafted my response slowly, because this was the one that mattered. I respectfully disagreed. I sent him a 4-paragraph reply, citing studies on caffeine's effect on workplace productivity, the historical precedent of coffee being treated as a workplace utility going back to the Industrial Revolution, and the basic, observable fact that most adults functioning in an office environment before 9 in the morning required some form of stimulant in order to be productive members of the workforce. I closed by reiterating that I was simply seeking clarity, and that I appreciated his time. He did not respond. The silence stretched into the afternoon, then into the next day. I could feel him pretending I didn't exist when we passed in the hallway. So I escalated, gently. I went to my desk and opened a fresh document. I formatted it carefully, because formatting is everything in something like this. I gave it letterhead-style spacing. I titled it Office Supply Usage, Weeks 1 through 47. I itemized. Ballpoint pens, estimated quantity, 14, highlighters, 3, legal pads, 6, sticky notes, approximately 9 pads, paper clips, a generous estimate. I assigned reasonable retail prices to each. I added it up. The total came to $72.40. I printed it on the good paper. I walked it over to the operations manager's office while he was at lunch and laid it neatly in the center of his desk. He scheduled a meeting with me before 9 the next morning. I came prepared. I brought my own pen, a cheap blue one I'd picked up at the drugstore on my way in. I brought my own notebook, fresh from the pack. I brought a thermos of coffee from home, brewed in my own kitchen, in my own mug. I sat down across from him and set everything in front of me like place settings. I waited. He looked at the thermos. He looked at the pen. His mouth tightened. He told me I was being unprofessional. His voice had that flat, controlled quality people use when they're trying very hard not to sound rattled. I told him I was being fiscally disciplined. I kept my face completely neutral. He told me, slower this time, that office supplies were not the same as coffee. They simply were not, and I knew that, and this whole exercise was beneath me. I asked him, politely, to explain the difference in a way that did not depend on his personal preference. I said I was open to being convinced. I just needed a definition of necessary that didn't collapse the moment I poked it. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He shuffled some papers on his desk that did not need shuffling. He could not. The meeting ended shortly after that. He didn't dismiss me so much as run out of things to say. By the end of the day, he had sent another email reversing the coffee policy, citing employee feedback and the importance of a positive workplace culture. He used the phrase team morale 4 times. I counted that, too. He never made eye contact with me again. Not in meetings. Not in the hallway. Not in the break room, where I returned the next morning at 7:52, poured into my chipped mug, and started a fresh pot for whoever came after me. I kept the invoice as a souvenir. It's still in my desk drawer, between the stapler and the highlighters the company so generously provides. Okay, get ready for this. Something terrible happens on Prescott Mountain. The town knows but nobody talks about it. I moved to a small mountain town in Missouri when I was 13. My dad got transferred for work, some corporate reshuffling that meant his entire department was being relocated to a regional office nobody had ever heard of. He broke the news at dinner on a Tuesday. My mom set her fork down and stared at him. My little sister asked if we could bring the cat. And just like that, our family was uprooted from the suburbs of Kansas City and dropped into a place where everyone knew everyone and outsiders were noticed immediately. The town was called Harlan. Population 2,400, give or take. It was beautiful in the way that small towns are. The kind of beautiful that makes you want to take a photo and send it to someone. Tree-lined streets where the maples turned burning orange in October. A diner called Mabel's that served the best pie in the state. No exaggeration, people drove 40 minutes from the next county just for the blackberry cobbler. And a high school where the football team was the closest thing to religion. Friday nights, the whole town showed up. You could smell the popcorn from 3 blocks away, hear the marching band warming up from your front porch. But underneath the postcard surface, something was wrong. I felt it before I understood it. A tightness in the way people smiled. A silence that would fall over a conversation when certain subjects came up. The way my neighbor, Mrs. Hadley, would stand on her porch every evening and stare up at the mountain with this expression I could never quite read. Not fear, exactly. Something closer to resignation. It started with the stories. The other kids at school talked about Prescott Mountain the way you might talk about a haunted house, with nervous excitement and the unspoken understanding that some topics are off limits around adults. I learned that fast. The first week, I asked my history teacher about the mountain during class, and the room went dead quiet. He looked at me for a long second, then said, "Nothing up there but old mines and copperheads," and moved on. After class, a girl named Sophie grabbed my sleeve in the hallway. "Don't ask about the mountain in front of teachers," she whispered. "Just don't." They said people went missing on the mountain. Not hikers who got lost. People who lived in town. Teenagers, mostly. Every few years, someone would disappear. The official explanation was always the same: they ran away, or they fell, or they wandered too far. But the kids knew those explanations were lies. They traded the names like ghost stories at lunch. Danielle Pruitt, 2005. Kayla Marsh, 2008. A girl named Robin whose last name nobody could remember, sometime around 2002. My friend Kyle told me about the sounds. Kyle was the first kid who talked to me on my second day of school, a lanky, red-haired boy with a chipped front tooth and a habit of chewing on pen caps until they cracked. We were sitting on the bleachers after school one day when he brought it up, his voice dropping low even though no one was around. If you hike far enough up the trail past the old mining roads, he said, not looking at me, you can hear something. Like what? He shook his head. Not an animal. Not the wind. Something rhythmic, mechanical, and deeply, deeply wrong. Like metal scraping against stone, over and over. Coming from underground. I stared at him. You're messing with me. He finally looked at me, and I remember the expression on his face. A mix of frustration and something that looked a lot like hurt. I'm not, he said quietly. But you won't believe me until you hear it yourself. So he took me. We went on a Saturday morning in late September. The air was cool and smelled like pine and wet earth. We parked Kyle's beat-up Honda at the trailhead and started hiking. For the first hour, it was just a normal trail. Birds calling, leaves crunching under our boots, sunlight filtering through the canopy and gold columns. Kyle didn't say much. He just walked, his jaw tight, his eyes scanning the tree line like he was waiting for something. After 2 hours, the trail narrowed and the trees grew thick enough to block the sky. The air changed. It got heavier, damper. The birds stopped singing. I noticed that specifically, because the silence was so sudden it felt physical, like someone had pressed mute on the world. And then we heard it. A low, grinding hum that seemed to come from the earth itself. Rhythmic, steady, like something turning beneath our feet. I could feel it in my chest before I could hear it with my ears. This deep vibration that made my teeth ache. It pulsed. Every 3 or 4 seconds, a scrape, then a pause, then another scrape. Mechanical, deliberate. Something down there was moving. Something was working. I looked at Kyle. His face was pale. Told you, he said, barely above a whisper. Kyle grabbed my arm and we left. Fast. Neither of us spoke until we were back at the car. He started the engine with shaking hands and said, now you know. That was all. We never talked about that hike again. But I never forgot the way the ground had hummed beneath me like it was alive. Over the next 3 years, I became obsessed. Quietly, carefully obsessed. I researched the town's history. I pulled records from the Harlan Public Library, dusty folders in a back room that the librarian, a tired-eyed woman named Mrs. Cho, let me access without asking why. I think she knew. I think she wanted someone to look. I mapped every disappearance I could confirm on a timeline, pinning dates to a corkboard in my bedroom closet where my parents wouldn't see. And what I found was a pattern so clear it was almost insulting that no one had noticed, or that everyone had noticed and chosen to look away. Every disappearance was a girl between the ages of 15 and 19. Every disappearance happened within the same 6-month window, late spring to early fall, April through September. And every single disappearance was preceded, within 2 weeks, by a visit from a particular man who worked at the mining company that owned most of the mountain. His name appeared in town council minutes, in permit filings, in a single faded photograph from a 2004 newspaper clipping about a company fundraiser. He was smiling in the photo, standing next to the sheriff. I brought my research to Kyle once. Spread it out on his bedroom floor, the timeline, the map, the names, the pattern. He looked at it for a long time. Then he gathered it all up, handed it back to me, and said, "You need to stop." His voice was flat, final. I could see something in his eyes that I hadn't seen before, not curiosity, not fear, but the kind of exhaustion that comes from knowing something terrible and carrying it alone for too long. I didn't stop. I cannot tell you what I found when I finally went into the mines. I cannot tell you because part of me still does not believe it, and another part of me knows that if I write it down, I will never be able to unknow it. Some things sit in you like a stone at the bottom of a lake, too heavy to move, too deep to see, but always there. Always pressing down. What I can tell you is this: the town knew. The sheriff knew. The school principal knew. The diner owner, sweet old Mabel with her blackberry cobbler and her warm smile, she knew. They all knew. And they stayed silent because the mining company owned everything: the jobs, the houses, the water supply. Every paycheck in Harlan had the company's name on it, one way or another. Silence was the price of survival. You kept your head down, you let the mountain keep its secrets, and you told yourself that the girls probably did just run away. That's what you told yourself so you could sleep at night. I left that town the day I turned 18. I packed one bag, got in a Greyhound, and did not look back. My parents had already split up by then. My mom took my sister back to Kansas City, my dad stayed for the job. I sometimes wonder if he knows. I sometimes wonder if he's made the same bargain everyone else in that town made. I have not been back. But I still hear the grinding sound in my dreams. That low, rhythmic scraping from deep in the earth, pulsing through the dark like a heartbeat. And I still wonder about the girls. Okay, moving on. New manager said I must CC her on every single email. She got buried in 300 emails a day. Our new department manager, Rachel, arrived on a Monday morning with a rolling briefcase, a brand new leather portfolio, and what I can only describe as the energy of someone who had read every middle management self-help book published in the last decade. She introduced herself to the team with a firm handshake and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, and by Wednesday, she had already rearranged the supply closet and changed our weekly stand-up from 10 minutes to 30. But the real moment, the one that made all 12 of us exchange glances across our desks, came on Thursday afternoon. She called a team meeting. Nothing on the agenda except a single bullet point: communication transparency. I remember my coworker Dan leaning over to me and whispering, "This can't be good." He was right. Rachel stood at the front of the conference room with her hands clasped together like she was about to deliver a TED Talk. "I've spent this week observing," she said, "and I've noticed that communication in this department is siloed. I don't have visibility into what's happening day to day, and that makes it very difficult for me to support you effectively." She paused, letting that land like it was supposed to mean something profound. "So starting tomorrow, I'd like to be CC'd on every email you send." Every single one. The room went quiet. Not the respectful kind of quiet. The kind where everyone is processing something absurd and trying to figure out if they heard it correctly. My colleague Sarah spoke up first. She was the most senior person on the team and had a way of pushing back without sounding confrontational. "Rachel, just to clarify, you mean every email? Including routine internal stuff? One-line replies?" "Every email," Rachel confirmed, nodding like she'd anticipated the question. "Internal, external, client-facing, routine, urgent. All of it. I need full visibility to do my job effectively." I watched Sarah do the math in her head. I was doing it too. Our team of 12 was not a quiet team. We worked across multiple client accounts, coordinated with 3 other departments, and handled a constant stream of updates, confirmations, and scheduling threads. On any given day, the volume was enormous. "Rachel," I said carefully, "I personally send somewhere between 40 and 50 emails a day. Some are detailed client updates, sure, but a lot of them are just one-line responses." "Sounds good." "Confirmed. Thanks, got it." If you multiply that across 12 people, you're looking at 300 to 400 emails landing in your inbox every single day. She didn't blink. "I can handle it." Dan opened his mouth to say something, then closed it. I could see him physically swallow the words. Sarah gave a small shrug that said, "Well, we tried." And that was that. So we complied. Starting Friday morning, every single email I sent had Rachel's name in the CC field. Client update about a deliverable timeline? CC Rachel. Quick reply to Dan confirming I'd handle the afternoon call? CC Rachel. A one-word response to an internal thread that said nothing but, agreed. CC Rachel. I'll be honest. There was a part of me that took a grim satisfaction in it. Not in a malicious way. But in the way you feel when someone ignores reasonable advice and you know exactly how the story is going to end. Every time I typed her name into that CC line, I thought, you asked for this. By Monday, her phone was buzzing like it was having a seizure. You could hear it vibrating against her desk from across the office, a constant low hum that became the background noise of our entire floor. She had notifications turned on for every email, something she probably set up when she was getting 15 messages a day, not 400. I walked past her office around 10 in the morning and glanced in. She was scrolling, not reading, scrolling. Her eyes were glazed over, her index finger flicking the mouse wheel in a rhythm that looked almost meditative. She'd been at it for at least an hour. I could see the scroll bar on her screen. It was tiny, the kind of tiny that means you have hundreds of unread messages stacked up like bricks. By Tuesday, things started to crack. She missed a client meeting with one of our biggest accounts. Not because she forgot. The calendar invite was there, buried somewhere between Dan's "will do" reply to a printer maintenance thread and Sarah's forwarded PDF about updated invoice formatting. Rachel didn't see it until 20 minutes after the meeting started, and by then, the client had already sent a politely irritated follow-up asking if everything was okay. She missed a second meeting on Wednesday. Same reason. This time, the client was less polite about it. I overheard her on the phone in her office that afternoon, her voice tight, saying something like, "No, I absolutely received the invite. There was just a technical issue with my calendar syncing." There was no technical issue. Her calendar was fine. Her inbox was just a river, and she was drowning in it. The rest of us carried on as normal. Nobody said anything. Nobody gloated. We just kept CCing her on everything, exactly as instructed. There was an unspoken agreement among the 12 of us. We would follow this policy to the letter. Not one email more, not one email less. Just pure, unwavering compliance. Dan sent me a message on our internal chat during that second week. It just said, "How long do you think?" I wrote back, "Friday. Maybe sooner." I was close. It was Thursday. Rachel sent out a department-wide email at 4:47 p.m. with the subject line, "Updated Communication Policy." The body was short, professional, and carefully worded in a way that made it sound like this had been her plan all along. Like the original policy was just phase one of a larger strategy. The new rule: she only wanted to be CC'd on emails involving clients with accounts over $50,000 or internal escalations that required management input. That was it. No mention of the previous policy. No acknowledgement that anything had gone wrong. No, "I realized the volume was unsustainable," or "Thanks for your patience while I adjusted the process." Just a clean, quiet pivot, delivered as if the last 2 weeks hadn't happened. I did the math on the new policy. Clients over $50,000 and internal escalations? That came out to maybe 4 or 5 emails per day. Which, if you'll recall, is almost exactly what we had suggested in that very first meeting. Sarah had even offered to set up a daily summary email for Rachel, a digest of key updates she could review each morning. Rachel had declined. She wanted full visibility. Dan caught my eye across the office after we all read the new policy. He didn't say anything. He just raised his coffee mug slightly, like a toast, and took a sip. Rachel never admitted she was wrong. Not once. Not in that email, not in any conversation afterward. She moved forward as if the revised policy had always been the plan, and we let her. There was no point in pressing it. The inbox had made the argument for us, louder and more persistent than any of us ever could have. But every now and then, when I send a routine one-line email and my finger hovers over the CC field out of pure muscle memory, I smile a little. Some lessons don't need to be spoken out loud. Sometimes 300 emails a day say it just fine.